This is eCommerce Uncensored. Brought to you by Fast Forward Unlimited. We're coming to you fully loaded and exposed with all the strategies and techniques for growing your e-commerce business.
Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us on another episode of eCommerce Uncensored. This is episode number 87. My name is Kevin Manel, and I'm here with
Jason Caruso.
So I am very excited about today's episode because it is our first episode back from Klaviyo Boston. And
Klaviyo Boston was awesome.
I got to turn these levels down.
Yeah,
we're way too high.
That's because of you. Because you just can't stop. You just can't leave them alone.
No, we had it up. We had it up high when we were recording at Klaviyo Boston.
Yeah,
so
I know all about it. Okay,
now it's all fixed.
Anyway, so you guys know that Klaviyo is our partner for the podcast, right? They sponsor our podcast. And what we did was in Klaviyo, they invited us, as you know, to their conference. By the way, awesome conference.
Amazing. What a
amazing.
Trip.
Yeah. And we loved Klaviyo before they became one of our sponsors. And we love them so much that Kevin and I actually have conversations behind the scenes saying, yeah, like we got to calm this down a little bit. Like we talk about them too much and we don't want to wear people out.
Yeah.
But let me just say something, Kevin. Tell me if you agree. What an amazing company.
I mean, from the very moment we walked into the building of the conference,
somebody walked us in.
Yeah, somebody walked. I have a funny story about that. I'll tell that in a minute. But we found it. We had a hard time finding our way in the first. But the dude walked us through. It was like we went.
A guy named Jake.
Yeah, so I met a guy named Jake. Hey, Jake, I know you listen. I hope you're listening now. But he was actually the guy who first found our podcast and shared it around the office. So we kind of owe our relationship with Klaviyo to Jake. So thank you, Jake.
Right.
So anyway, I go in, watch, and we have a conversation, and Jake tells me this story, and it's really nice, and I say, okay, great, thank you, Jake, and I walk on, and I meet the next person, and I think I met Alicia from Klaviyo. So I said to Alicia, I was like, so do you have anybody that you really like to hear us talk to on the podcast?
She said, Jake.
She said, yeah, she started saying a bunch of, I was like, Jake, that's awesome. I already met Jake. That's great. That's perfect. And
turns
then,
out,
we were walking around. We met Steve, the CRO, and a bunch of other people. It was great. Everybody was like, you couldn't walk by somebody without them
they were
talking
awesome
to you.
I mean, the CEO, from the CEO to the CFO to the CTO to the COOW, whatever, they all were awesome.
Yeah.
And it makes you just want to work with them more. I mean, they're just an awesome company. Yeah. But Kevin.
Yeah. So then I was like, oh, great, Jake. I already met Jake. So I leave that conversation and I'm like on the way into the first presentation, the opening keynote, and I see the dude, Jake, that I walked in with. I was like, awesome. I'll just hook up with him and we'll get him on the podcast.
He's not the Jake that they wanted you to.
Yeah, unfortunately, like Jake, don't take this the wrong way, man. With all due respect, I'd love to have you on the podcast. It just happened that I had the wrong Jake at that point.
Right. So just to clarify this, the guy Jake who walked us in was not the guy Jake that everybody wanted us to talk to. Two different guys. One guy is the director of product. The other guy is a young guy.
He was a younger guy.
Yeah. So it was pretty funny. We started off on a good foot.
Yeah. We walked in there like we wanted to kind of network. We wanted to meet as many people. I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. The first interview I already met on the way in.
Right. So
that was funny.
Yeah, it was an awesome conference. And man, let me say something. The stuff they're doing behind the scenes is, and like I have to be careful not to get too excited about this company in general because I don't want to annoy people that we talk about all the time, but the stuff they're doing, more specifically, the what is it? The
predictive stuff.
Predictive, like they're going to be able to predict how much money people are going to spend with you over the next 6 months. Yeah. It's insane. That's one of the things, and we actually have on one of our episodes the two guys who are responsible for that, and we'll get into that more. But today's episode is going to be with Brian Whalley. Whalley,
yeah.
Yeah,
Brian
and
Whalley.
He's the other director of product. And you guys are going to get like a really behind the scenes sort of insight on what Klaviyo is working on, like the kind of people that they have. I mean, it seemed like their CEO or whoever does the hiring hires the same person over and over. They're all on board. They're all nice people. They all will talk to you for as long as you want to talk to them for, and they all love where they work.
Yeah, and you're going to hear us mention that. We have a series of podcasts that we're going to put out that are going to be interviews from people from Klaviyo. And you're going to hear us say that over and over again, because every time we met somebody, we were like, man, this team is amazing.
Yeah, and it's not because they sponsor the podcast. I mean, yeah, they do, and that's great. But I'm just blown away by the company in general and literally how they run their business and how, they told us a story about how they go through these levels of hiring, and then, if the guy gets to the CEO and the CEO says like he's not the right fit, like the guy doesn't get hired. But then if the team can like override the CEO, like it's amazing how they run this company. And whether they're paying us or not, I think we'd have the same reaction. They just really are awesome people.
Yeah, and it just makes us, the way Jason and I talk, we like to talk about our experiences, we like to talk about things we like, and it just makes it so much easier to come on here and tell you guys to go
and sign up
for Klaviyo. And if you haven't done it already, you need to go to ecommerceuncensored.com/email. That'll redirect you to a page where you can sign up for Klaviyo, and you need to get that going right away.
Yeah, and I want to just say one thing. So I want to just say thank you to everybody who has done that, because Kevin and I are probably one of their smaller podcasts that they work with. eCommerce Uncensored is one of the smaller podcasts that they work with. And they told us that our audience, the number of people who are signing up through our podcast, right? We're their smallest podcast. They said that we are on par with their biggest podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So we're the smallest, and because of you guys, our podcast is performing at the same level as their biggest podcast. Now, let's put this in perspective. Their biggest podcast gets hundreds of thousands of downloads.
Yeah.
Okay? But you guys, because of you guys, we're able to compete with those bigger guys. And I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Yeah.
Because that's a big deal to us. Kevin and I purposely don't take sponsors unless we can stand behind the company. And I don't really, our agency makes us a lot more money than this podcast ever will.
Mm-hmm.
So just taking money from people as sponsorships is not that important to us. So what the hell was my point? So
you were thanking.
I want to
people
just
who
thank you guys
up,
because it's.
I apologize. Jason had a few beers at lunch.
Yeah, I'm a little tipsy.
So he's kind of like he was in Boston, where he couldn't really hang with us while we were there.
Because all you guys want to do is anyway. So I just want to say thank you guys because, you guys really have given us a good name with Klaviyo, and it just makes it nice for us because we really stand behind this platform and the stuff that they're doing in the future. If you are not on their platform, you are losing money, period.
Right.
Period. So I don't want to keep going on about this because we're going to have a lot of episodes. I think it's 4 of them. And when we told everybody who we were interviewing, they were like, you guys got the big wigs.
Yeah, you're talking to the right people.
Talking to the right people. I mean, we got the head of product, the director of product. We got the directors of this science. What is
data
it?
science.
Science.
Yeah, the head of data science. So these are the
2
real
of
guys.
them. I mean, one guy went to Harvard, the other guy went to Columbia. Like Kevin and I are like, yeah, we went to.
That's the big thing about Klaviyo. We were just talking about Klaviyo. I don't remember with who, but they're like data science. Like that's an email marketing platform.
Yeah, like what the hell?
But that's like what it is. It's like this. That's what drives this whole thing is data. It's not just you're going to send emails out willy-nilly and you're going to make some money. They're going to be able to take that data, all the data from your customer list, and predict what will happen.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's amazing.
That's amazing. And like the things that they're talking about doing. Let's not get into it because they're going to talk about it on the podcast. And let's not waste any more time because we thought this was going to be 5 minutes. I'm guessing it's a lot longer. But without further ado,
yeah, we got Brian Whalley, is the director of product at Klaviyo, and we'll just jump into you and we'll
jump into it.
We'll jump into it.
We're not going to jump into you.
Yeah,
we're going to jump into it.
Listen now. All right, so we're here now with Brian Whalley. Whalley, am I saying that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
He is the director of product here at Klaviyo. And Brian, why don't you go ahead and tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Brian. I've been at Klaviyo for about 2.5 years, and I've been working in the marketing tech and marketing automation space for about 12 years now. So I worked at HubSpot for a long time, and now I get to do it for the e-commerce side.
HubSpot.
Yeah, I was at HubSpot for a little over 3 years.
Wow, I used to work with HubSpot.
Yeah.
Not with them, but on their platform.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of makes sense you're moving over to Klaviyo, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so we've been talking about coming to Klaviyo Boston for a couple weeks now, and we're finally here. And the first presentation we listened to was actually by Brian this morning. It was about something that we talk about a lot on the podcast, and is the growing your email list and how to go about the exact strategies and how to use opt-ins and things like that. And he made some really great points.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, man. Like there were some really clever opt-in pop-ups that you were showing as examples, and I wish I was that clever. I'm not, I don't know if it's something you learn or what, but there's just some people out there that are really, really clever about what they use for their pop-up, and Brian's gonna come up with a few things that they're seeing in the data actually as to what the most important things that you need to have. Now he can't go through everything, right? But he's going to go through the things that he thinks are most important. And then I have a question for him that I wanted to ask during his presentation and I couldn't. So why don't you, Brian, just tell us a little bit about what your data is telling you from a standpoint of what our audience should have on their pop-ups.
Yeah, so we see people who have the most successful pop-ups or flyouts or kind of early stage conversion points on their website. There's a couple things that they tend to do really, really well. They include basically their company's mission, the reason why their company exists or that their products are special, into the context of that pop-up. This is like way more powerful than just a plan like, hey, subscribe to our weekly newsletter at that point. Gets people invested in, especially if they connect directly with that company's mission or with why that product is important. It is so much more powerful.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So like one of the examples I gave this morning is of a beard brand who does a really phenomenal job of this. They sell like beard grooming products. So it's an audience that is not always used to like being marketed to with like products for self-care, self-grooming, and like personal appearance. But they've found a way to turn that into like restoring confidence in their ability to like look really good, to feel really good about how they look and everything. And that works really, really well for them.
Right. You got a really specific audience. It's like you got these big burly guys. You definitely have to speak to them in a certain way.
Yeah, but they all feel like they're part of a club. I remember back in the day, I don't know if you remember this, but remember Tom's shoes? Mm-hmm. It was like the shoes were like, okay, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. But it was like the mission, right? We're giving back. We're giving back to whatever it was, people in need in Africa, or whatever the thing was. And people didn't necessarily join them because of the shoes per se, right?
Yeah.
It was like the mission. Like, what are they doing? So that's a really good point that I think a lot of people miss.
Yeah.
So
by bringing that out, and then a lot of these sites that are doing really well with this, the other thing that they do really well is collect some kind of preference information up front. So it's not just harvesting email addresses is kind of like the unpleasant way that they do it. But they turn it into like, tell us more about like, why would you subscribe to this, or what are you looking to get out of it? So to return to like the beard brand example, you're joining their mailing list at one level, and then they have a checkbox that's like, hey, opt me into your 10-day grooming course. And so that really starts to work for them, because then they have the people who are like, I don't just want like your weekly newsletter or like emails when you have something new to tell me, but like I want you to like spend 2 weeks, send me a lot of email over the next 2 weeks. I'm signing up to get like 10 extra emails, one a day for the next 10 days ish. And they can really get on top of their grooming game right away, and like get, if that's a like urgent thing for them, if it's something that they're thinking about.
Right. So they can, in other words, they get on the email list and not, they know they're going to be marketed to, but in this scenario, they're actually going to learn. You know who does this is Dollar Shave Club.
They do this. They also do a great job.
They really do. And I was part of their, I was in their funnel, and what they do is like you get on and it's like they send you all these things like what you should do while you're pooping, or like all these bathroom like things that add to the experience. And it's funny, we don't do that enough.
Well, I think it's such a huge part of it, and a lot of the slides the examples that you gave this morning, the copywriting side of things and the creative copywriting that you can do. It's just not like, because it's gotten to the point where giving someone's email address is so important to them. They hold on to it so closely. it's not the credit card, but like if I give them my email,
Can you
like
stop
I'm
banging the table, please?
He's always a pain in the ass like to say something. Sorry.
Well, I can't change because he's here.
It's a really serious commitment that they're getting involved with. So you have to communicate them in a way that makes them feel comfortable, and puts them over that threshold of fear that they may have.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and oftentimes that pop-up, I know in Klaviyo there is, and we love Klaviyo, obviously, but there's a really awesome function in Klaviyo that you can not show the pop-up to people who are actually in the database already, and you're going to assume they're either on your newsletter or customers. And that's pretty awesome because when you're, we have a lot of our clients, Brian, that come to us and they're like, I don't want to keep giving my customers a 20% discount or a 10% discount, and if their platform can't differentiate between a first order and a 50th order, Klaviyo, right?
Yep.
I guess does it through cookie,
Yep.
and they match it up with the database, right?
Yeah. So there's two levels that we can do it at. One, the one that you mentioned, where you can say, hey, like, don't show this to if they're in the database at all. And the other thing that we launched recently that's really powerful and people are doing some interesting stuff with is you can target a form to only show up for people that are a member of like a specific list or segment in Klaviyo.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so people are doing so like, hey, only show this pop up to somebody if they're on my VIP list or if they're in Washington State or whatever else.
Yeah,
and
that
can get really targeted with their forms that way.
That goes on, like, that's behavioral stuff, right? That it used to be just like URL based.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like just like you visit this URL or this page, and then you can get a pop up. This is like, and this is really why I'm excited about Klaviyo, right? Because they bring this enterprise type functionality to people who can actually afford the tool, and it's really nice because it does these things that people don't realize have been going on for years and years and years with the big guys.
Yeah. Right.
And now you've brought it down to like just to a level where most companies can afford it, and if they use it right, it can make them money. And I appreciate that because for us, we're always trying to get results for our clients.
Yeah.
And we not only it's the results, it's like we hear problems. It's like, oh my God, my customer saw this pop up 3 times. Now they called up and they're pissed off.
Yeah.
So that little thing, and that's why I tell everybody on this podcast, look, I don't know what you're using, MailChimp, GetResponse, one of these other platforms. Like, you need to stop and just sign up for Klaviyo, and if you use our link, eCommerceUncensored.com/email, it will redirect you to Klaviyo, and that we would really appreciate if you use that.
Yep.
So
yeah.
Go
ahead.
No, another big part that I found interesting was actually the first part of your presentation that you gave, and it was about, you really jumped into the immediate, the spin the wheel opt-in that you see
everybody
all the time.
I've used it.
And we get, I've used it, but I thought it was interesting how your metrics have proven kind of that's not necessarily the guy that you want.
Yeah.
Even though you get this pretty thing, and we deal with it with our clients a lot, is like they want that pretty shiny new thing that they see in the window, but in the end, it's really not, the kind of person you want.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Brian.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Nope.
We're talkers. I know.
I know.
So
it's good.
One thing, I think that people, at least our audience, needs to differentiate, and I think this is what you were getting at in your talk, right? Everybody's all for the vanity email number, right? I got 500,000 email subscribers, but like, I don't think enough people put enough emphasis on the actual quality of those emails, right? Like, I always tell people, like, look, I can go buy a list of 500,000 real estate emails, but if I'm selling sneakers, it doesn't matter how big that email list is, right? You maybe find some people who in there who are interested, right? So,
that was the point I love to make. Is like, you've got 10,000, 500,000 people on your list, whatever. But like, how many of those people on that list bought from you in the last 2 months? And you say, oh, I don't actually even know. And I was like, well, we can help you with that problem. Both knowing, like, what's the value of that list? What are you getting out of it? Is it helping you actually grow, or are you sending them stuff that just isn't getting them to buy?
Yeah, and I think that's like the most important thing, because not only are you paying for that person to be on your list, right?
Yeah.
Like, you guys charge depending on how many people you have subscribed, right? So if there's a cost to that number, like I used to, and Kevin's probably sick of me saying this, but I used to have a blog that got like 1 million visitors a month to it, right? And I like, my partner at the time, I would delete people if they haven't opened up an email,
Yeah.
and I was using crappy. I'm not going to mention the name, but I was using another platform that doesn't allow you to do this automatically. I had to actually go in there and like see who hasn't opened up an email in a year, 6 months, 2 months, and I would just delete them or unsubscribe them. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "They're just costing us money. I don't want to just pay for someone to be on my list." So you know, that's definitely something that I think you were getting at in the talk. Like, you want people on your list, but you want people who will buy from you. You want customers, like your target there.
Yeah.
You know,
You want people that you're going to have a real relationship with. There was a great question from the audience. It's something that I've talked about a couple of times. Is like during the holiday seasons coming up, you start to see like very different buying behaviors than you get the rest of the year. You get the people who come in once a year buying a gift for a friend. They know that they love that brand, so they're going to buy something from that specific brand store. And it's like, yeah, that's a really valuable subscriber, but you should be able to identify that this is somebody who buys, you know, on a holiday cadence or around a birthday. Like Andrew, our CEO, mentioned in his keynote this morning, he has the experience of like his wife has bought him the same pair of shoes, basically within about a week or so of the same time of year every year for like 4 or 5 years running, and that company has paid no attention to the fact that he's done so, and
that was
disappointed.
Yeah. And you know, so there is a quality. There are different buying patterns. For example, I just bought. It made me sick, but I just bought like a $360 pair of Oakley sunglasses.
Oh my God, he's been sweating over it for the last week. Should I buy this one? Even on right before we left to come here, we had to review his choices before we actually he could move ahead with this.
So they were prescription, and you know, and look, I'm sure I'm gonna love the glasses. I can't wait for them to come, but I'm not looking for a third or fourth or fifth pair of sunglasses. So I am a buyer.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I'm going to keep coming back and buying. So they should be tracking me. They should be trying to figure out what exactly kind of customer I am. And I think that's very important, you know?
And they should be watching for like, when's the next time he comes back to our website? Because you just spend a lot of money on a pair of sunglasses. But when you come back 2 months from now, they'd be like, he's thinking about us again. Like, is now the time to really start re-engaging with him. Exactly.
And one other thing, you know, when you were going through the segmentation, right? Somebody puts their email in, and then it takes them to like a segmentation, whatever sequence. You know, some people, our clients, will say, "No, I don't want to annoy them," you know. But really, the people who it's going to annoy are not really the customers that you're talking about, right?
The customers that you're going to build a relationship with are going to be so happy that you care at all about what they're interested in. The fact that a brand shows any interest in what they're actually shopping for, what matters to them, what causes or uses of their products are most important to them, they're going to be like, people are smart. They generally understand, like, if I give you some information, you're going to do something with it. Like, you're going to be discerning. You're going to take it, interpret it, and like change my experience based on what you've learned about what I'm interested in or what's important to me.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we talk a lot about strategies and stuff on this podcast, but I think it's important for people to also know, and Brian, I think you'll agree, that not all demographics react or respond the same, right? So maybe like, you know, an older demographic may not want to go through that process as soon as they give you their email address. Maybe they want to wait until, you know, they get comfortable. Or maybe the younger people, they want that, you know, whatever. You should test, right? That's a big thing. That's another part of Klaviyo, that, you know, the A/B testing stuff. That's really important. So that's another thing. It's like, I always get worried that people are going to listen to what we say and the advice we give and paint it with like this broad brush that it's just going to be the same for everybody, and it's not. You have to test. You showed many different examples, and people in different industries and niches did it a different way, right? Because they knew their customer. So that's important. I just wanted to point that out.
And we talk a lot about presenting an offer for those kind of opt-ins, but I found a lot of your examples didn't even have an offer. A lot of them were just, you know, being part of something, and people like to be just part of something. And if you present that in a certain way, I think you can still be successful in your email.
Yeah, and it's it could be really powerful, both as a store owner, just to have like financial control over your destiny, and to build better relationships with your customers when your relationship isn't centered around getting a 10% discount. Both like helps you hang on to your margin, which can be so easy to give away sometimes in to try and get a sale. But also like it gives you a much more meaningful relationship that you can build with your customers when it's not just around like how do they get the next discount code from you, but instead around like what's something new that you're doing? What part of their identity are you speaking to, or whatever? Yeah.
And that would also depend on the product, the demographic, because if you have a higher priced product, you may want to give that 20% off just to get them in the door. It depends on what else you can sell them, right? Like ingestibles, we work with ingestibles. Like there may be a strategy that actually makes sense, because now they have to, buy another bottle. So there are certain instances, and again, I agree with you. The 20% off, 10% off doesn't always work the same, but there are instances, depending on what you're selling, that does work, and we see it working all the time. Now, from the agency side of things, like sometimes we don't have like years to prove that what we're doing works. So building that relationship, it is a little bit tough for us, because we have to get people results, but it's as a brand, it's a great strategy.
And even on the agency side, you can still even if you have to work on a shorter time window than yours, you can identify some of the things that will help your client realize the potential of that segmentation, like finding the pockets of customers that buy most frequently or with much higher order values than the typical customer, and understand like, hey, like, did you know that you have this pocket of customers that acts very differently than your other customers? Like, what if we could both find more of them and continue to leverage that audience in a way that you haven't been so far? That'll like help a queue in a shorter timeline that way.
And that's what Klaviyo does. Like, Klaviyo turns historically a one-dimensional type platform. Like email platform is like always one-dimensional, right? It was just like, send out a newsletter here or there, here's an offer, blah, blah, blah. The nice thing about Klaviyo is that you actually have all these different data points, right? Like, oh my God, Kevin is cheap. He spent $1 with me over the last year. This guy has
You didn't say that at dinner last night.
Yeah, because I paid for it too.
Oh, yeah, use my credit card, right? I remember.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it turns something that was historically very, flat, into something that really has all these layers. And I think that honestly, from our standpoint, you guys are really just at the beginning of what this thing is going to be. I mean, I'm excited about it now. I just can't wait what we're going to see. And you guys are always releasing new, the new flow library.
Yep.
Do you know how much that has helped me?
Yeah.
Like, when I'm telling people I'm going to do flows for them, it gives me like a starting point, and then I can just build out, anything else inside of it. Which is awesome.
Yeah. One of the things that we've seen be really valuable with that is it helps encourage people to like scaffold out how their automations are going to look before they get into like actually writing the content and stuff. Because one thing that we found is that the more that people kind of build before they start like writing the emails and finding images and getting those things put together is otherwise they would build them one email at a time, and then they would get like 2/3 of the way through building the automation and realize that they wanted to go back to the start and like change the structure, and they'd be like, oh, now I have to go rewrite that email. Like encouraging people to like build things out and think through the entire experience before committing a lot of language.
You've basically taken a whiteboard and you stuck it inside of Klaviyo, right? This is Russell Brunson. He the whole funnel thing. I mean, it's all kind of like the same idea.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. I mean, that's one of the features that really, really helps with time. It also helps if you're new, right? And you don't really know what kind of flows you may or may not need. It's really simple to go in there and then just grab one and be like, oh, okay, this is how this is. One other thing that I thought was really useful with it is that there is some logic in the back end of Klaviyo that could be confusing, and you have the framework of some of the confusing ones that, like the trigger point, like what's the trigger, right? I've just used them sometimes just to use your triggers because, it can get a little confusing. Do you use placed an order or bought a product? I mean, how do you start the flow?
Yeah.
I use the library to basically do it for me.
Awesome.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was number 2, I think, right?
Yeah.
Was there a third? Did I talk so much you forgot what the third was?
I think so. No, it's good.
Okay.
One last point that I wanted to make.
No, but I have a question for you.
You have a question.
Okay.
Is that I think we come across a lot of clients of ours, and a lot of people we talk to are always worrying about the next sale. They're always like, okay, that person bought, and we just had a podcast about this. Is like, somebody buys something. Okay, how do I get another one? Or how do I get another one? Or how do I get another one? Instead of leveraging, those customers that you already have or that email list you already have. And I think Klaviyo gives you that power to just like sort through all that data. Say, oh, it's September. Let me just see who bought last September and what they bought last September. Maybe they'll buy again. It gives you that ability to just pull that kind of information in.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different things. I mean, we can't go through it all right now. I mean, obviously you know it better than we do, but there's so many different ways to segment, people's, and this is what I like to say, their buying behavior.
Yeah.
That's what it is, right? Like, we just had our last podcast where, like, people think when you make a sale, like, that's where it ends. Let me go run some more ads to try to get new customers. And we're like, wait a minute. Why don't you just continue selling to the ones who already trust you? Right?
Yeah.
That's what your platform does. Klaviyo allows you to stay in communication with people who have purchased, thus bringing the cost of the next sale right down, right?
Yeah, people that you've already paid that advertising spend on or whatever.
Exactly.
People where it's just all margin at that point.
Exactly.
After your product cost, like, that's pretty good. It's pretty exciting when you get those kinds of sales.
And that's what we're trying to talk a lot about, because I think, again, this is such it's not new for the big guys, but it's starting to become new, for the whole Shopify boom and, all this. So I think it's a good thing. Now, I gave you a little warning about my question. I wanted to ask you while you were speaking, and I don't know if it was convenient that the guy, you ran out of time for my question.
You saw the bald guy in the back. Right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, we were running out of time.
So I'm always infatuated with the back end data that we don't see, right? Like, you guys go into everybody's, I mean, whether it's anonymously or what, but you go into people's accounts and you see the data, like what's happening, and you can, you're not talking from like it's your opinion. You're looking at the data, right? And you're being like, hey, look, our biggest brands, this is what we're seeing. Our small, whatever. Okay. How is mobile affecting this pop-up slash fly-in strategy? Sure.
So we've seen two things, one of which really has surprised me, and one of which was not so surprising. The not surprising part is, like, most people still don't really target their forms, like different versions of their forms for mobile versus desktop. Most people are still sending the same version of the form to both types of browsers. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with doing that, especially if you've got a pretty straightforward form, like it's an email point and then maybe one or two questions of preference information. That's a totally fine mobile experience. You can go through that. The email address might even pre-populate depending on what browser they're using or what the setup is. But I was expecting more people to, like, start to leverage that right away, to have, like, really skinny, narrow calls to action on mobile, or to have flyouts that were really minimal. We've certainly seen some people doing it, but less than I would have expected. The thing that has surprised me is how readily people did adopt working through the Google penalties around full screen takeovers of pop-ups on entrance pages. A lot of people have found good ways to get around that, either by making sure that the height of the form, even if they're asking several questions or whatever, is like pretty minimal. It doesn't cover the whole page or more than 30% of the page, or finding other ways around it, like only having the form load on the second page load, or other things like that, having it fly in from the bottom on the second page load, so that it's not on the entrance page, but if that person starts to interact with that site at all, that pop-up comes right in.
Yeah, or you could, a better, in my opinion, answer to that is forget about Google and run paid traffic to your website, because if screw them. No, seriously, like, why do I gotta like play by their rules? Like, if I send paid traffic to my website, I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want, and you don't have to worry about any of that nonsense. But
and you're relying on Google at that point.
And I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody tells me. Even if you told me, I wouldn't believe you. Pop-ups work the best. People say, "Oh, they're annoying." I have never seen.
No, they absolutely work the best.
They work the best, right? They convert at the highest. Hands down.
We've seen people do really exciting things with other types of forms, but like if you can only have one placement, if you only have that one option, or there's one thing that you want to make sure is really consistent across your site, Those are the ones that we see have a 7, 8, 9, even sometimes 10% conversion rates on those pop-ups. And it's like you're not going to get that with any other kind of.
They work, man. My
type.
blog was getting like 250 signups a day with that pop-up, and I didn't care if it annoyed people. They're not the right people. Get out, you know.
Yep.
And to your other point, you know, it also is pretty interesting, right? On mobile, the pop-up, right? Like, it's not as big, so it's like, to your point, like, you should have two different forms, right? And the mobile should be a little bit less wordy, right?
Yeah.
The font shouldn't change as much, right? Like, you just need like larger font because it's going to be harder to read. And most of the time, people on mobile, right, they're not really there to like read, you know, your pop-up per se. They're either just checking something out, a price or whatever. So definitely test. That's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the times I mentioned this briefly in my presentation, but people having different pop-up experiences for, say, like a major entrance page like their homepage versus like a product page where somebody who's looking at a product page has an intent of like they're really actively shopping at that point. They're looking at individual products. It's a good time to not throw up something that's going to interrupt their behavior in that moment. But then for something where it's like more brand focused, they probably like their friend told them about you or something like that, and they're just going straight to your homepage as their entrance page. That's the perfect time to like use a pop-up for like email collection or something like that.
Exactly. And then you also have to make sure that they're not popping up on checkout pages and like, you know, whatever. So, all right, I think that's pretty good, Brian. I really appreciate you stopping by. I mean, when we first came here, we really didn't know who we were going to talk to, if anybody was going to, because let me tell you something, the experience of this event was awesome. From the sidewalk when we got walked in, like somebody like almost like grabbed us by the hand and started like I almost felt uncomfortable. The guy's talking to me and I'm like, I'm trying to look around, like, you know.
Yeah, walk around. There's prints on all the walls. Like we were downstairs and we came up here. We were listening to the presentation and the
stop hitting the friggin' table.
You relax.
All right.
And the whole wall is like covered in prints. It's great.
Yeah. No, we don't. We try to do it as quickly as possible.
No editing.
No editing. Right. So, again, we really appreciate you taking your time out. We love Klaviyo. Everybody knows that. eCommerceUncensored.com/email will redirect you. Sign up. Shoot me an email. I'll create 2 flows for you, even though there is a library there. But I'll do it anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
And Brian, you're presenting again tomorrow morning?
No, I'm not presenting again. But there'll be a great product keynote by the other director of product, Jake, tomorrow morning.
I think we're going to talk with Jake too.
We are going to talk with Jake.
Definitely, you should. And he'll be talking a little bit about like kind of what we've done this year and where we're going over the next months. Years,
I think this is a good time to be on Klaviyo because of all the new features that you guys are launching. Like, it's really, back in the day. I'm sorry to extend this.
No, it's good.
Back in the day, the reputation of Klaviyo was clunky, hard to make flows happen. And then all of a sudden, you guys did this like awesome revamp of the platform, and now I think it's like the other way. It's like, man, it's so easy. You could do anything in there. It's just, and congratulations, or is that the right word?
Yeah,
sure. I guess.
Yeah. We launched our new visual flow builder in January of this year, which was a big unlock for a lot of people that wanted to build more sophisticated flows.
Huge.
Launched a new sign-up forms product right after that. And then we launched, I think, over 30 features on the platform in between, I think, like February and July. So it's just like a really intense rate of publishing new features for our customers.
And I'll tell you what, I don't know if you had anything to do with this update, but it was probably my favorite, was the the analytics tab, the homepage tab. It was useless before like 3 weeks ago. Seriously. Let's be honest. I love the platform.
It got a big update. That's what I'll say.
It got a huge update, because I used to complain to Kevin, like when our clients, they'd be like, we would give these reports for a 14-day report, and I couldn't friggin' choose a custom date. And I'm like, how does an email platform that is this freaking sophisticated not have custom dates? Well, my big mouth, I called up Klaviyo, and the guy's like, hey man, like, we just launched it 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. No, apologize.
And he is a complainer, so.
I'm not, I'll be your biggest cheerleader, but when I'm recommending a product to people who trust what I say, I have to be honest. And Klaviyo, if Klaviyo was perfect, they wouldn't be releasing new features. They know that it's an evolving, working, breathing animal.
We have a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Right. It's the best, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to improve. So I just wanted to say that was one of my favorites because now I can do custom dates and find out, And
Yep. So there's a lot of new sophistication that came in with that new dashboard. It's pretty awesome.
It is awesome. So we're not going to keep
cool.
him any longer because you'll be here all day with
That's
us.
good. But, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Brian.
Yeah, we really
great.
appreciate it. And
everyone out there, set their calendars to come to this next event. You don't want to miss it this next time.
We'll be doing a new series of workshops across the country next year, and then another Klaviyo Boston in the fall of 2019.
Oh, cool.
We'll be here.
Sounds great. Thank you
Thanks
so
a
much,
lot.
Brian.
Appreciate
Awesome.
it.
Thanks.
All right, guys. All right, guys. Well, that was Brian Whalley from Klaviyo.
That was awesome.
Great guy.
Yeah, really
good guy. We really enjoyed. It's funny because these guys would sit with us and never leave.
Yeah.
Especially the guys, the science guys. These guys, you'll see they stay with us forever.
Yeah.
They're awesome. Everybody.
They were so accommodating too. They were like, we had Josh with us, the guy who was on our last podcast, the DJ that we talked to last time, and he came with us to help with booking interviews, and he was just like, I got this guy interested. We're like, awesome, that's easy.
Yeah,
they're just so friendly and so
really
easygoing, and they literally just sat there and kind of in the middle of their schedule where we got things going all the time. They got presentations here,
and by the way, they got 400 other people who wanted to talk to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So ecommerceuncensored.com/email. Sign up for a Klaviyo account. We would really appreciate it. That helps us out so that Klaviyo can track where their signups are coming from. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed Brian Whalley, and we will see you guys.
Yeah, and subscribe to the podcast so you can listen to the other interviews we got.
Right. We're going to stagger them.
Yeah. We're not going to just throw all the
This is not a Klaviyo podcast.
Yeah. So
but we do love them.
So over the next couple months we'll be posting different interviews that we had during Klaviyo Boston. So thank you guys so much. This has been episode number 87. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you guys real soon.
Later.